Before we begin today, it's important to note that this video touches on traditional Navajo beliefs surrounding Skinwalkers. Out of respect for the Navajo nations and their culture, I've worked to present this story in a sensitive and respectful manner without sensationalizing or distorting the lore. Skinwalkers hold a deep and serious place in Navajo spirituality, and discussing them openly is considered taboo by many. The Navajo tribe they don't talk about it. It's pretty much off limits. This video is not meant to trivialize these beliefs, but provide context and insight into the rich culture and stories of the Navajo people. If you'd like to learn more about the Navajo Nation, I encourage you to seek out resources directly from the community and approach these topics with respect. I will link in the description of the video, I will link to Navajo Nation literature online. I also want to say, while this disclaimer is being said in the Skinwalker video, it also extends retroactively to the Wendigo video, because they are both culturally sensitive to their respective tribes, the Algonquin for the Wendigo and Navajo for the Skinwalker. They deal with taboos in the communities, and I just want to throw this out there that while trying to be culturally sensitive to this and keeping within my own style, I did write a story for this, but I have not gone out and generated any images because this thing is already blown up. There's already so many misrepresentations of what this thing is. I didn't really feel it was appropriate for me. Cat's down there. I don't know if you know, you can't see him. I didn't feel it was appropriate for me to go and generate images of what this thing could look like according to me. So no images for this one today. I'm sorry, that's just the way it is. I'm trying to be sensitive because this thing has been so blown up and overused in pop culture and in media and by those who shall not be named. So let's get into this. What? What is it, best friend? What are you doing? Yeah? You having a good day? No? What's wrong? Yeah? Are you hungry? You want some food? Oh, okay. You just being extra? Yeah. You want to cuddle? Come here. Oh. Say hi to the camera. Tons of fun. Oh. Say hi. Say hello. My name is Michelangelo, and I am 30 pounds. This is my buddy. He's 10 years old. You big old 10-year-old kitty cat. Oh. All right, sorry about that. My boy wanted some cuddles. All right, let's get into the story. No, he's all disheveled on the floor. You've heard the stories. They say if you hear it call your name, it's already too late. But no one believed it. Not at first, anyways. The desert night was still. The only sound, the faint crackle of the fire and the whisper of the wind against the jagged rocks. You felt it, though. A heaviness in the air. Something watching from the shadows just beyond the light. Jackson sat across from you, silent as ever. His eyes, once sharp and alert, were glazed over, staring into nothing. You'd been out here for days, tracking down rumors of strange things in the canyon. At first, it was just a fun camping trip, but something changed after that last hike. Jackson had wandered off, said he heard something in the rocks. But he came back different. You didn't want to admit it, but deep down, you knew something had followed you. Something that wasn't supposed to. It started small, footsteps where there should have been none, a shadow moving in the corner of your eye, and then the sounds. Low whispers in the night, barely audible, but unmistakable. And now, here it was again, that voice. Tom. It was Jackson's voice, but warped, like an echo from a long tunnel. It came from somewhere behind you, but Jackson was right in front of you, staring blankly into the fire. Your blood ran cold. Slowly, you turned your head, and there it was, just outside of the firelight, barely visible, but definitely there. A figure, hunched and twisted. Not quite man, but not quite animal. It shifted in the shadows, its eyes reflecting the fire. The air around you felt thick, oppressive, like the world itself was holding its breath. You glanced back at Jackson, but he hadn't moved. The creature's eyes locked on yours, and in that moment you knew it. Jackson wasn't with you anymore. Whatever had come back from the canyon wasn't your friend. Welcome back to the channel, guys. First time here, welcome to the channel. I'm Stone Rock, and today we're diving into one of the most feared and misunderstood legends of the Navajo culture, the Skinwalker. But before we get started, don't forget to hit like, subscribe, ring-a-ling the ding-a-ling. You'll be alerted whenever we upload more scary tales or deep dives into the paranormal. Now, let's clear up some of the misunderstandings right away. Skinwalkers aren't what you see in Hollywood movies or spooky internet tales or in some paranormal investigator stories. They aren't mindless monsters lurking around for no reason. In Navajo culture, a skinwalker, or the Yi Nyaod Lushi, meaning with it, he goes on all fours, is a type of witch. Not just any witch though, it's a deeply malevolent one who has chosen the path that violates the most sacred of Navajo beliefs. The Navajo people believe in harmony with nature and community, called Hosho. A skinwalker is someone who has broken this harmony in the worst way possible, using spiritual powers for selfish and evil purposes. To gain these powers, they must commit an unspeakable act, usually killing a close family member, and in return, they gain the ability to shapeshift into animals like wolves, coyotes, or even birds. But it comes at a terrible cost. They abandon their humanity and become something cursed, living outside the natural balance. But here's where the real story starts to differ from the fictionalized versions we often hear. Skinwalkers aren't rogue animals out to randomly harm people. They're more calculating, using their powers of transformation to wreak havoc on enemies or those who have had a grudge against in the past. They often possess great knowledge of healing and spiritual practices, but instead of using it to help, they've turned to the dark side of Navajo magic. From my understanding, they were medicine men, they were shaman, turned to the dark side by committing this heinous act and became witches. Or at least the Navajo version of the witch, which would be the skinwalker. What they do is they don the skin of what they wish to become, and they get powers associated with whatever they wish to become. Breaking down the pop culture myths, let's dispel some of the more popular myths that have been blown out of proportion. First, skinwalkers aren't werewolves. Their stories often describe them as beings who can transform into wolves or coyotes, but the transformation isn't about becoming a wild, uncontrollable beast. It's about deception. They use these forms to spy, steal, and even murder without being noticed. Think about it. If you saw a coyote or an owl in the wilderness, would you think twice? I wouldn't. Not at all. Another big misconception is that skinwalkers are always malevolent forces hunting for innocent people. In Navajo lore, they aren't random predators. They often have a specific target in mind, someone they hold a grudge against or want to harm. They're witches after all, with deep connections to dark spiritual forces and not mindless monsters. Now let's return to the story. You stared at the creature, heart pounding in your chest. The fire flickered, casting long, eerie shadows across its distorted face. The edges of it formed, rippled, and shifted, like it couldn't quite settle on a shape. It took a step forward, and you heard the crunch of gravel under its feet. Your pulse quickened as the air grew colder, the fire's warmth no longer reaching you. Then you heard it again, Jackson's voice, weak and distant. Tom, help me. It was coming from the darkness somewhere behind you, but Jackson, if you could still call him that, was right in front of you. You could feel the pull in your chest, the instinct to turn around and follow the voice, but something deep inside screamed at you to stay put, to not give in. The figure moved closely, stepping fully into the light. Its skin, if you could call it that, looked stretched too tight over bones that didn't fit. Its eyes were all wrong, glowing with a cold, predatory light. It opened its mouth, and this time when it spoke, it wasn't trying to sound like Jackson. The words slithered from its lips, low and menacing. Like a challenge. You could feel your legs twitching, wanting to take off into the night. But you were rooted in the spot, knife gripped tightly in your hand. And that's when you saw it, a movement in the corner of your eye. Another figure low to the ground, crawling towards the fire. Your breath caught in your throat. There was more than one of them. A more in-depth cultural explanation. The real fear of skinwalkers and Navajo culture doesn't come from the idea that they're lurking in the dark, waiting to attack any passerby. It's deeper than that. It's about the betrayal of trust and the corruption of spiritual power. You see, in Navajo tradition, medicine men and women were healers, using their spiritual abilities to protect community and restore balance. A skinwalker, though, is someone who has taken the same spiritual knowledge and twisted it for selfish, harmful purposes. Skinwalkers don't just shapeshift to cause chaos. They use these forms to perform unspeakable acts under the cover of night, to spy on their enemies, and even curse or harm people without being recognized. They're more like spiritual assassins than creatures of instinct, and that's where the real terror comes from, because a skinwalker could be anybody. It could be someone you trust, someone within your own community, hiding in plain sight. This is also why speaking about skinwalkers is taboo in many Navajo people. It's not something to be taken lightly or casually discussed, because it's believed that acknowledging them could invite them into your life. Even today, many Navajo communities won't openly discuss skinwalkers for fear of drawing their attention. So, I am kind of breaking cultural taboo by putting this video out there. And to those Navajo people that may be online and see this, I am deeply sorry if I have caused any offense to you or your family or your community. I'm sorry. I feel like there's a ton of misinformation out there, and that there needs to be some form of correction done. And hopefully with me putting this video out and discussing from the Navajo cultural beliefs and, discussing how it comes about and what it actually is, people can have a better idea about it and stop sensationalizing the thing so much. So once again, I'm sorry if I have caused any offense to my Navajo friends. I'm deeply sorry. I do not mean to offend you in any way, shape, or form. Returning to the story now, the final escalation. You spun around, the knife shaking in your hand. Another figure, smaller, was creeping toward the fire on all fours. Its eyes gleamed in the darkness, feral and hungry. You could feel your pulse thudding in your ears, drowning out the crackling of the fire and the rustling of the desert wind. You were surrounded. Behind you, the first creature shifted again, its form rippling, bones cracking as it grew taller. It let out a low, rumbling growl, and you could feel the hairs on the back of your neck rise. You took a step back, but there was nowhere to go. The second figure moved closer, its breath hot and ragged. You couldn't run, you couldn't fight. And that's when you realized the desert wasn't quiet anymore. The whispers were back, growing louder and closing in from all sides. The fire went out. For a split second, everything was dark. You heard movement, fast, predatory. You swung your knife, but it connected with nothing, and then you felt cold fingers wrapping around your wrist. There was no escape. Not from this. Not from them. Closing explanation, the cultural caution, and conclusion. At the heart of the Skinwalker legend is a warning, a cautionary tale about the dangers of tampering with the balance of the world and abusing spiritual power. For the Navajo, Skinwalkers aren't just terrifying. They can shapeshift and curse people. They represent the consequences of turning away from community, of becoming consumed by selfishness and darkness. Hopefully this video has remained respectful. I believe it has. Again, I'm sorry to any Navajo that may see this, that it offends. If it has deeply offended this community, let me know, and I will take the video down. It is not my intent to offend the Navajo community, and I'm truly sorry if I do. It's just there's a lot of misinformation about this thing, and I feel like by putting this up, I am trying to represent it for what it actually is, and that it should not be sensationalized. But that's just my take on it. So that's been it for the video today, guys. I thank you for catching it out. Again, I'm sorry it's a little bit different, just because the way this thing has been sensationalized all over Hollywood and by certain people on YouTube. I did not feel it was appropriate to generate images for the story like I normally would. That's just how it is with this one. But I hope you guys have a good day, and I'll catch you guys later. See ya.